Blood streaked the windshield in crimson arcs. Metal screamed against metal. The Sikorsky S-76D, 9 tons of precision aviation engineering worth $18 million, spun wildly through Massachusetts airspace at 3,000 feet, its tail rotor shredding apart in a cascade of sparks and smoke. Victoria Sterling gripped the cyclic with both hands, knuckles bone white. The controls were dead, completely unresponsive. Hydraulic failure at altitude, the nightmare scenario every pilot dreaded, but few survived. In the co-pilot seat, a voice cut through her rising panic. Deep, calm, military calm. Collective down, all the way, now. She obeyed without thinking. The collective lever dropped. The main rotor, freed from powered resistance, began windmilling faster. The RPM needle climbed into the green arc, 97%, 99, 101. Good, hold it there. Pick your landing zone. 2,000 feet. Franklin Park spread below them, a patch of October green in urban Boston. People scattered like ants' faces, turned upward, phones already recording what they assumed would be a spectacular crash. Baseball diamond, southeast corner. Commit to it. Victoria's hands shook violently. The ground rushed up with sickening speed, every detail growing larger. Trees, playground equipment, the white lines of the baseball field. I can't do this. The hand that covered hers on the cyclic was steady, rough with calluses. Strong. Yes, you can. Maintain 60 knots airspeed. Watch your descent rate. 1,500 feet per minute. Steady. 1,000 feet. She could see individual faces now. A woman with a stroller running. A man diving behind a park bench. Flare at 100 feet. Not before. Count with me. 4, 3. 50 feet. The ground filled her vision. 2, 1. Flare now. Together, his hand guiding hers, they pulled back on the cyclic. The helicopter's nose pitched up sharply. Forward momentum bled away. The descent slowed. Physics and desperation combining in the ancient aviation art of autorotation. Level the skids, both hands, fight it. 30 feet, 20, 15. The skids hit wet grass with bone-jarring impact. The helicopter bounced, tilted 45 degrees to starboard. For one impossible heartbeat, they hung suspended at the edge of rolling over fuel, sloshing, metal, groaning. Marcus Washington threw his full weight against the tilt. 190 pounds of former military muscle, 3 years of janitorial work, and every ounce of will he possessed. The helicopter crashed back down upright with a screech of tortured metal. Silence fell, then sirens, voices shouting, footsteps running across grass. Victoria turned to look at the man beside her. Blood ran down his face from a gash above his right eye. His jaw was clenched tight. His hands, the hands that had just performed an aviation miracle, trembled with more than adrenaline. She recognized that tremor. PTSD, combat trauma, the shaking of a man who'd been to war and come back broken. How did you... Her voice came out as a whisper. Marcus unbuckled his harness with shaking fingers, wouldn't meet her eyes. Fuel leak. We need to move. He pulled her from the cockpit 20 seconds before orange flame engulfed the passenger compartment. The explosion knocked them both flat on the grass 15 feet away. Heat washed over them in waves. The Sikorsky's $18 million frame melted like candle wax. Victoria lay on her back, staring at smoke billowing into the October sky, feeling grass cold and real beneath her shoulders. Alive. Impossibly, miraculously alive. She turned her head. Marcus sat beside her, arms wrapped around his knees, rocking slightly. His lips moved in silent counting. 1 to 10, 10 to 1, over and over, a grounding technique, therapy homework for trauma survivors. A janitor who flew helicopters like a god. The alarm clock's red digits glowed 5:47 in the pre-dawn darkness of the South Boston studio apartment. Marcus Washington silenced it before the second beep, a habit from years of military discipline. Never disturb the barracks. Never wake the sleeping child. He sat up carefully. The mattress, 10 years old, bought secondhand from Goodwill, groaned beneath his weight. Through the thin wall separating his bedroom from Zoe's, he heard her steady breathing. Still asleep. Good. 8-year-olds needed their rest, especially 8-year-olds who'd lost their mother 3 years ago and still woke crying from nightmares. The bathroom mirror showed a face Marcus barely recognized anymore. 36 years old, but looking 45. Hollowed cheeks, dark circles under his eyes. A small scar above his left eyebrow from shrapnel half hidden now by crow's feet. The man in the mirror had flown Black Hawks through the mountains of Afghanistan, had logged 1,500 combat hours with the 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment, the Night Stalkers, the most elite helicopter pilots in the United States military. That man was gone, dead as Sarah, dead as the family in Fallujah. This man was a janitor making $32,000 a year, barely keeping his daughter fed and his own demons at bay. Marcus splashed cold water on his face, took the orange prescription bottle from the medicine cabinet, sertraline 100 milligrams. For PTSD and major depressive disorder, the VA psychiatrist had explained 3 years ago when Marcus could barely string together coherent sentences. When the nightmares were so bad he'd wake up punching walls screaming in Arabic, Sarah's name tangled up with the names of people he'd killed or failed to save. He dry-swallowed 2 pills, the bitter taste familiar as regret. The small kitchen held a rickety table, 2 mismatched chairs, and a refrigerator that hummed too loudly. Marcus made oatmeal on the ancient electric stove, 50 cents a serving, filling enough to keep Zoe's belly full until her lunch. Added cinnamon and a drizzle of honey the way Sarah used to make it. "Daddy." Zoe stood in her doorway wearing pink pajamas with cartoon cats, her hair a cloud of tight curls that Marcus had not yet learned to tame properly, despite 3 years of YouTube tutorials and advice from Mrs. Patterson next door. "Morning, baby girl. You're up early." "Bad dream." She patted over on bare feet, climbed into his lap without asking permission because she'd never needed it. 8 years old and wise beyond measure, old before her time, shaped by loss into something both heartbreaking and beautiful. Marcus wrapped his arms around her. "Want to talk about it?" "Mama was in a fire." Zoe's voice came out small. "She was trying to tell me something, but I couldn't hear because of the noise." His chest tightened. The car accident that killed Sarah hadn't involved fire, just a drunk driver running a red light, crushing the driver's side of her Honda Civic. Sarah's last breath drawn alone while paramedics worked frantically, and Marcus was 3,000 miles away in Germany processing his medical discharge paperwork. "Just a dream, Zoe. Mama's safe in heaven, remember?" "I know, but she looked worried, like she wanted to warn me about something." Children's intuition. Sarah used to say Zoe inherited her grandmother's gift, seeing things others missed, feeling trouble before it arrived. Marcus had dismissed it as superstition until Fallujah taught him that some people truly did see beyond the veil of ordinary perception. "What do you think she was warning about?" Zoe tilted her head, considering with the seriousness she brought to all questions. "About you, Daddy, that you're sad, that you pretend to be okay, but you're sad inside, and one day the sadness is going to leak out." Direct hit, 8 years old, and she'd identified the truth Marcus spent every waking hour concealing. He kissed the top of her head, inhaled the coconut scent of her kid's shampoo. "Maybe a little sad, baby, but I'm okay, I promise." Ms. Chen says it's okay to be sad. She says feelings are like weather, they come and go. Zoe pulled back to look at him with those impossibly old eyes. "And Daddy, when can we get a new mama?" The question shouldn't have shocked him. She'd asked variations of it before, but it still landed like a punch. "Sweetie, not to replace her. I know we can't replace Mama, but other kids have moms, at pickup, at school plays, and I—" She trailed off, bottom lip trembling. Marcus cupped her face in both hands. "Someday, Zoe, when God sends the right person, when we're both ready, I promise." "Do you promise? Promise, or just regular promise?" "Promise, promise. Cross my heart." She seemed satisfied with that, wiggled out of his lap to investigate the oatmeal situation, declared it acceptable but requiring more honey. They ate breakfast together as October dawn crept through the windows, turning darkness to gray, and Marcus tried not to calculate how many hours until he could sleep again. His shift at Titanfall Aerospace started at 6 p.m., ran until 2 a.m. 8 hours of mopping floors and emptying trash cans, invisible labor performed by an invisible man. At 7:30, Mrs. Patterson knocked 3 soft raps that meant, "I'm here for Zoe." The 70-year-old woman next door had been Marcus's salvation for 3 years, watching Zoe during the overnight shifts when daycare was closed and Marcus's schedule made traditional childcare impossible. She refused payment beyond grocery money and occasional help with her cable bill. Said she'd rather spend time with a smart, beautiful girl than sit alone watching television waiting to die. Morning, Angel. Mrs. Patterson held out her arms. Zoe went to her with easy affection. We're making pancakes today. Real ones, not that instant box nonsense your daddy tries to pass off as food. I heard that, Mrs. P. You were meant to. She winked. Go on now, get some sleep. You look like death warmed over. Marcus thanked her, watched them disappear into apartment 3B, then returned to his own space. Stripped down to boxers, set his alarm for 3 p.m. time to pick up Zoe from St. Catherine's Elementary, help with homework, make dinner, drive her back to Mrs. Patterson's for the overnight. He lay in bed staring at the water stain on the ceiling, shaped vaguely like a bird with outstretched wings. Sleep should have come easily, he'd been awake 22 hours. But his mind spun through its usual cycle of worries. Rent due in 12 days, Zoe's shoes falling apart. The Honda's check engine light blinking ominously for the past month repair costs he couldn't afford. The pill bottle on his nightstand, running low. Refill required copay he didn't have. And beneath everything else, the nightmares waiting. Fallujah. The family. The intelligence report that said, hostile target confirmed when it should have said, civilian vehicle do not engage. His finger on the trigger. The Hellfire missile screaming away from the Black Hawk's mounting bracket. The explosion. The screaming. 4 children. 2 adults. All survived technically. The father lost his left arm. The mother her legs. The children their sense of safety in a world where American helicopters brought death without warning. Marcus had been court-martialed, found not guilty following orders, acting on provided intelligence, everything by the book. But the guilt didn't care about legal verdicts. Neither did the nightmares. Neither did the tremor in his hands that made flying impossible, now reflexes compromised, confidence shattered. He'd lost his wings, lost his career. Lost, Sarah, not directly, but the timing felt connected. The universe delivering compounded punishment for sins real and imagined. Sleep finally dragged him under around 9 a.m. When he woke at 3, the bird-shaped water stain looked less like wings and more like talons reaching down. Victoria Sterling's morning began at 5:30 in her penthouse overlooking Boston Harbor. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the city in gold and glass, expensive and distant. The apartment itself was a study in minimalist design, white walls, chrome fixtures, furniture that prioritized aesthetics over comfort. A showroom, a magazine spread, anywhere but a home. She stood in silk pajamas drinking green juice that cost $18 and tasted like punishment, scrolling through overnight emails on her tablet. 47 new messages, 12 requiring immediate response. 3 marked urgent by Richard Torrance, her CFO, who had an unfortunate tendency to label everything urgent, regardless of actual priority. The quarterly reports stared back from the screen columns of red numbers that should have been black. Revenue down 18% year over year. The Lockheed Martin contract, $200 million in Apache helicopter component manufacturing, delayed 6 months, while government bureaucrats reviewed environmental impact studies and union negotiations dragged through additional rounds of arbitration. Her father would have known how to fix this. William Sterling had built Titanfall Aerospace from nothing over 30 years, transforming a small machine shop into a billion-dollar defense contractor through force of will and strategic ruthlessness. Victoria had watched him work, studied his methods, absorbed his philosophy. Never show weakness. Never apologize. Power respects power. 6 months since his plane went down over the Atlantic. No survivors. No warning. Just a routine flight to meet investors in Nantucket that ended with wreckage scattered across 3 miles of ocean in a closed casket funeral because there wasn't enough left to bury. The FAA investigation concluded mechanical failure. Catastrophic engine malfunction at 12,000 feet. Nothing suspicious. Just bad luck and worse timing. Victoria didn't believe in bad luck. She believed in maintenance protocols and inspection schedules and the principle that machines only failed when humans failed first. But the investigators had been thorough. No evidence of sabotage, no indication of foul play. Sometimes planes just fell from the sky, taking fathers and futures with them. She finished the green juice, showered in water hot enough to hurt, dressed in a Tom Ford suit that cost $3,200 more than Marcus Washington made in a month. Though she didn't know his name yet, didn't think about the night shift custodians at all, except when they disrupted her schedule with vacuuming or left visible streaks on the glass conference tables. The drive to Titan Falls headquarters took 20 minutes through morning traffic. Victoria piloted her Tesla Model S with aggressive precision, changing lanes without signaling, cutting off delivery trucks, earning honk protests she ignored. Time was money. Hesitation was weakness. Her father's voice narrated every maneuver pushed through. Take what's yours. The world rewards the bold. At 7:45, she swept through the lobby, her assistant Emma falling into step with a tablet and concerned expression. Morning, Victoria. Richard's been calling. Says it's urgent about the helicopter maintenance logs. What about them? He wouldn't tell me, insisted on speaking directly with you. Victoria's jaw tightened. Richard had been acting strange lately. Jumpy, distracted, making unusual requests about insurance policies and succession planning. She'd attributed it to stress. The company's financial troubles affected everyone. But something in Emma's tone suggested deeper concern. Tell him I'll see him at 9. And Emma stopped looking at me like someone died. Sorry, it's just, you've been working such long hours. Mrs. Chen mentioned you were here past midnight again yesterday. Mrs. Chen, Maria Chen, VP of Human Resources, one of the few employees from her father's era still remaining. A woman who'd known Victoria since childhood, who remembered birthday parties and scraped knees, who looked at her now with something uncomfortably close to pity. Mrs. Chen should focus on HR matters, not my schedule. Victoria continued to her office, shut the door, stood at the window overlooking downtown Boston, 40 stories up. Master of all she surveyed, crushing under the weight of expectations she couldn't meet. Her phone buzzed. A text from her mother, currently living in a villa in Tuscany, spending her inheritance with Mediterranean efficiency. Board meeting today. Remember your posture. William always said posture conveys confidence. Victoria deleted it without responding. Her mother had checked out years ago, long before William's death. Some marriages survive tragedy, the death of their first child. Victoria's older brother lost to leukemia at age 7. Others merely endured hollow partnerships maintained for appearance and tax benefits. She pulled up the quarterly presentation for the 10th time, looking for weaknesses in her analysis, holes in her strategy. The board would be merciless. 17 directors, 12 inherited from her father's tenure, 5 appointed during the succession transition. Several openly questioned her fitness for leadership. A woman in her 30s, no advanced degree, no prior CEO experience, just the accident of biology that made her William's heir. Proved them wrong. Her father's voice again ghostly and insistent. Show strength. Dominate. Lead. At 9 o'clock sharp, Richard entered without knocking. Unusual for him, the CFO typically waited for permission, maintained rigid hierarchical protocol. He looked terrible, skin pale, eyes bloodshot, suit wrinkled. He'd either slept in his office or not slept at all. We need to ground the S-76. Victoria blinked. What? The helicopter. The Sikorsky. I've been reviewing maintenance lists and found significant discrepancies. He dropped a folder on her desk, papers spilling out in disorganized chaos, entirely unlike Richard's usual meticulous presentation style. Flight hours don't match engine runtime. Hydraulic service dates are inconsistent. Someone's been doctoring the records. Victoria's stomach dropped. The S-76D on their roof was her primary transportation for executive travel, faster than driving, more impressive than commercial flights, essential for the carefully cultivated image of Titanfall as a cutting-edge aerospace company. She'd used it dozens of times, including next Friday's planned trip to Hanscom Air Force Base for the Apache contract negotiations. Who's doctoring them? I don't know, but until we figure it out, that helicopter is unsafe. Cancel Friday's flight, drive to Hanscom, or postpone entirely. I can't postpone. The Air Force gave us one window. Senator Mitchell will be there, General Patterson, the entire procurement committee. This meeting determines whether Titanfall survives the next 5 years. Richard's hands shook as he pointed at the maintenance logs. Your father died in a plane crash, Victoria. He died because something failed at altitude. Do you really want to risk? My father died because of bad luck in routine maintenance failures. The FAA said so. The FAA investigation was cursory. They didn't push hard because William was... He stopped himself. Because he was what? Richard met her eyes for the first time. Because people wanted him gone, Victoria. Your father made enemies, powerful ones. And 6 months later, you're flying the same routes using company aircraft, making the same moves he did. If someone wanted to finish what they started, that's conspiracy theory nonsense. But her voice lacked conviction. She'd had the same thoughts late at night when sleep wouldn't come, and every creak in the penthouse sounded like footsteps. Just ground the helicopter, please, as a precaution. And look weak to the board show fear. They're already questioning my leadership, Richard. If I cancel this trip, if I show any hesitation, they'll move to replace me. You know they will. Richard slumped into the chair across from her desk. Then at least have the helicopter inspected. Full teardown, independent mechanic. We don't have time. Friday's in 2 days. Then don't fly it. They stared at each other across mahogany and mistrust. Richard looked older than his 48 years, worn down by something beyond corporate stress. Victoria wondered briefly about his home life. She knew he had a wife, a daughter, but couldn't recall their names. Another failure of leadership, her father would have said. Know your people. Leverage their vulnerabilities. I'm flying Friday, Richard. If you're that concerned, come with me. Bring your own parachute. She meant it as a joke. Richard didn't laugh. He gathered his papers with trembling hands and left without another word. Victoria returned to the window. 40 stories down, people moved through their lives like ants, insignificant and unaware. She wondered what it felt like to be one of them. To work for hourly wages. To worry about rent instead of market share. To be anonymous. Invisible. Free. Marcus arrived at Titanfall Aerospace at 5:45 p.m., 15 minutes early as always. The employee parking lot held his battered Honda Civic alongside newer vehicles, Accords Camrys, a few BMWs belonging to junior executives. His car was the oldest, the most abused bumper, held on with duct tape passenger window, replaced with plastic sheeting, after Zoe accidentally broke it playing baseball last summer. He grabbed his duffel bag from the trunk, spare uniform lunch from home, his worn copy of The Things They Carried, by Tim O'Brien, the only book that made sense anymore, stories of war and loss and coming home to a country that didn't know what to do with its broken soldiers. Dave, the night supervisor, barely looked up from his newspaper when Marcus clocked in. 15th floor tonight, executive suite. The CEO's working late again, so be quiet. Last week she complained about vacuum noise during a phone call. Marcus nodded. Quiet he could do. Invisible was his specialty. He loaded his cart industrial cleaner mops, microfiber cloths, trash bags, the smell of ammonia, and fake pine already soaking into his skin. The service elevator carried him up through the building's heart-passing floors of empty offices and dark conference rooms. Most employees left by 6. Only senior management stayed late grinding through emails and spreadsheets in their glass-walled kingdoms. The 15th floor was executive territory. Thick carpet that absorbed sound. Original artwork on the walls, someone told Marcus, once they were worth thousands, paintings by local artists William Sterling had patronized. Mahogany doors with brass nameplates. The corner office belonged to Victoria Sterling, light spilling from beneath the door at 9:30 p.m. Marcus started at the opposite end of the floor. Work methodically. Leave no trace. Be gone before anyone notices. But at 10:15, pushing his cart past the main boardroom, he saw them, Victoria and Richard, hunched over documents spread across the massive conference table. The lights were bright enough that Marcus could see through the glass walls. Helicopter maintenance logs, blueprints, technical specifications. He shouldn't look. Not his business. Just a janitor passing through. But old habits died hard. Night stalker habits. Notice everything. Miss nothing. The survival instinct that kept him alive through 1,500 combat hours that recognized patterns civilians missed, threats hiding in plain sight. He glanced at the open maintenance log on the table. One quick look, just enough to register the numbers. Sikorsky S-76D, registration N847TF, total flight hours, 1247 engine, runtime hours 981 hydraulic system service, last performed 03/15/2024, 266 hours missing. Flight hours should match engine runtime within 5 hours margin of error. Minor discrepancies from ground checks and maintenance tests. But 266 hours represented systematic falsification. Either someone was flying off books, conducting unauthorized operations, or someone was doctoring the records to hide inadequate maintenance. Either scenario was catastrophic for aircraft safety. Enjoying the view, Victoria's voice sliced through his concentration like a blade. She stood in the boardroom doorway, arms crossed, expression carved from ice. Marcus straightened, met her eyes, felt the weight of her contempt settle over him like familiar armor. No, ma'am, just passing through. Passing through, you were staring at confidential documents. I apologize. Won't happen again. She walked closer. Her perfume, expensive floral something French that cost more than his monthly rent, overwhelmed the ammonia smell of his cleaning supplies. She was tall, maybe 5'9" in her heels, with sharp features and blonde hair pulled into a ruthless bun, beautiful in the way sculptors carved marble into inhuman perfection. You know what's funny? Her voice dripped condescension. That helicopter has a fly-by-wire system worth more than you'll make in 10 years. Dual Pratt & Whitney turboshaft engines putting out 2,200 combined horsepower. Full glass cockpit with synthetic vision capability. 4-axis autopilot. She gestured at the maintenance logs like presenting evidence in court. But you wouldn't understand any of that, would you? People like you just exist in the background, pushing mops, emptying trash, never thinking about the actual work happening around you. Marcus kept his face neutral. Years of military discipline. Never react. Never give them satisfaction. No, ma'am. Good. Know your place. She turned back to Richard, who stood in the boardroom looking uncomfortable. And don't touch anything. Last thing we need is greasy fingerprints on sensitive documents. The door closed with a soft click that somehow felt like a slammed vault. Marcus stood alone in the hallway, fluorescent lights humming overhead, his reflection distorted in the polished chrome trash can beside him. 36 years old, a ghost in gray coveralls, invisible except when someone needed a target for their frustration. He continued his rounds, emptied trash cans, vacuumed carpets, cleaned bathrooms, but his mind wouldn't let go of those numbers. 266 hours. The kind of discrepancy that suggested either criminal negligence or deliberate sabotage. And Victoria Sterling planned to fly that helicopter in 2 days. At 11:30, Marcus finished the 15th floor and moved down to executive offices on 14. Most doors were locked, but he had master keys for all common areas and restrooms. He was cleaning the men's room when he heard voices through the ventilation shaft sound carrying strangely through the building's architectural quirks. Richard's voice stressed and urgent. Friday morning, 8 a.m. departure. She refused to ground the aircraft. Another voicemail digitally distorted. Good. The compound is already in the hydraulic system. Undetectable until altitude and temperature trigger crystallization. At 10,000 feet, complete hydraulic failure. She'll have maybe 30 seconds. Marcus froze, mop dripping dirty water onto pristine tile. Richard again, I need more time. If I could just... You've had 6 months. The Morettis want their money. $85 million. You pay it back or your family pays the price. Your choice. My wife is dying. Stage 4 cancer. Just leave her in peace, please. That depends on whether Victoria flies on Friday. Stick to the plan. Saturday morning, the insurance policy pays out. $100 million to you as interim CEO. 85 to us. 15 for you. Everyone wins. Except Victoria. Collateral damage, just like William. The line went dead. Silence filled the ventilation shaft. Marcus stood perfectly still, processing. Richard Torrance, CFO of Titanfall Aerospace, was conspiring to murder Victoria Sterling the same way he'd murdered her father 6 months ago. Hydraulic sabotage disguised as mechanical failure. The Moretti crime family, Boston's most powerful organized crime syndicate, providing both pressure and resources. And Victoria had no idea she was flying to her execution in 40 hours. Marcus finished cleaning on autopilot, his mind racing through options. Call the police. They'd want evidence. A janitor's word against the CFO's overheard through ventilation wouldn't pass probable cause standards. The FBI, same problem. And if the Morettis owned police and judges, which organized crime families typically did, any official report might trigger retaliation against Richard's family or accelerate the timeline against Victoria. No, this required a different approach. Marcus pushed his cart to the service elevator, descended to the ground floor, clocked out at 1:58 a.m. Drove home through empty Boston streets, passing homeless encampments under highway overpasses, late-night diners serving third-shift workers, the invisible infrastructure of a city that only showed its true face after midnight. Mrs. Patterson's light was still on. She waited up sometimes, worried about him driving home exhausted. Marcus tapped softly on her door. How was she tonight? Sweet as always. Finished her homework without complaining. Drew another picture, you'll want to see it. Mrs. Patterson handed him a sheet of construction paper, crayon marks in bright primary colors. 3 figures. A tall man with dark skin, a small girl with puffs of hair, and between them a woman with yellow hair and a blue dress. All 3 holding hands. Above them a son with a smiling face. Below a caption in careful 8-year-old print, our forever family. Marcus stared at the drawing. She drew a mother. Asked me what your boss looked like. I showed her the company website. Victoria Sterling's photo is on the leadership page. Zoe said, that's her, that's the one. Wouldn't explain what she meant. Children's intuition, Zoe's gift for seeing connections others missed. Marcus thanked Mrs. Patterson, carried Zoe to his apartment, tucked her into bed without waking her. Sat at his kitchen table with the drawing and a glass of water and the crushing weight of an impossible decision. Victoria Sterling had humiliated him, called him stupid, dismissed his existence. She represented everything wrong with privilege and power. The casual cruelty of those who'd never known struggle, who measured worth in bank accounts and pedigrees. She deserved no loyalty from him, no protection, no sacrifice. But 40 hours from now, she'd climb into a sabotaged helicopter and die screaming at 10,000 feet because a desperate man loved his family enough to commit murder, and a crime syndicate needed to erase evidence of embezzlement. And Marcus Washington, former Chief Warrant Officer 3, with the 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment, possessed the knowledge and skills to save her life. If he was willing to expose himself, risk everything, become visible. He looked at Zoe's drawing, 3 figures holding hands. A family that didn't exist yet, but could in some impossible future, where janitors married billionaires and broken soldiers found redemption. Our forever family. The sun was rising when Marcus finally made his decision. He had 40 hours to modify a sabotage, write emergency procedures, and prepare for a confrontation that would either save Victoria Sterling's life or destroy his own. He pulled out his phone, scrolled through contacts he hadn't called in 3 years. Found the number for Colonel Benjamin Hayes, his former commanding officer, the man who'd held Marcus while he sobbed through the Fallujah aftermath, who'd fought to prevent his court-martial, who'd written the letter that got him medically discharged instead of dishonorably. The text he sent was simple. Sir, need a favor, big one. Can you help with witness protection for a family of 3? We'll explain everything soon. Trust me, one more time. Hawk. The reply came within minutes, for you always, standing by. Marcus set down the phone, looked at the drawing again. 3 figures. Yellow-haired woman who'd called him stupid. Dark-skinned man who'd once been something more than invisible. Small girl who saw futures others couldn't. He had 40 hours. The war wasn't coming anymore. It was already here. Thursday morning arrived cold and gray, October wind carrying the smell of rain off Boston Harbor. Marcus woke at 6 a.m. after 3 hours of fitful sleep, nightmares tangled with half-formed plans. Zoe was already awake, sitting at the kitchen table with her cereal, studying the family portrait she'd drawn the night before. Daddy, why does this lady look... Marcus poured coffee from the ancient Mr. Coffee machine, black and bitter. What lady, baby? The yellow hair lady, in my picture. When I was drawing her, I could feel she was sad inside. Like you, but different sad. He sat beside her, examined the crayon woman more closely. Zoe had drawn her with a smile, but something in the posture suggested loneliness. Shoulders slightly hunched, arms hanging at her sides rather than reaching out. Maybe she's sad because she doesn't have a family like we do. That's what I thought too. Zoe took a serious bite of Cheerios. So I drew her into our family. Now she won't be sad anymore. 8 years old, solving the world's problems with Crayola and construction paper. You have a good heart, Zoe. I got it from you and Mama. She studied him with those old eyes. Are you going to help the sad lady today? Marcus froze spoon halfway to his mouth. What makes you think I'm helping anyone? Because that's what you do. Mrs. Patterson told me about when you were a soldier. She said you saved lots of people. And Mama used to say you couldn't stand seeing people hurt even when helping them hurt you. The accuracy staggered him. Sarah had understood him completely, the compulsion to protect a shield to take bullets meant for others. It had made him a brilliant combat pilot and a terrible husband, always volunteering for the dangerous missions, always choosing strangers over family until family was gone. Sometimes helping people is complicated, baby girl, but you're still gonna try, right? Because that's who you are. Marcus kissed the top of her head, inhaled coconut shampoo and childhood innocence. Yeah, I'm still gonna try. At 7:30 after dropping Zoe at school, Marcus drove to a storage unit in Dorchester he'd rented 3 years ago and barely visited since. Unit 247, 10 by 10 feet climate-controlled, containing everything from his old life that didn't fit in the new one. The combination lock opened on the third try. His fingers remembered the sequence even when his conscious mind struggled. Inside, cardboard boxes labeled in Sarah's handwriting, kitchen stuff. Marcus Military. Photos do not open unless strong. He pulled down the box marked at flight gear and felt time collapse. Nomex flight suit name tape still attached CW3 Washington. Leather gloves worn soft from 1,000 missions. His helmet bag, custom-fitted HGU 56P, inside scratched and dented. Decorated with unit patches and kill marks from vehicles destroyed, lives ended or saved depending on perspective. At the bottom, wrapped in an oily rag, his challenge coin. 3 inches of solid brass, the 160th SOAR crest on one side, a winged sword piercing a shield. The unit motto, Night Stalkers Don't Quit, circling the edge. On the reverse, his personal inscription, Chief Warrant Officer 3 Marcus J. Washington, 2011-2021, Death Waits in the Dark. He held it, felt the weight of brotherhood and loss. Thought about the men he'd flown with, most still serving, a few dead, all moving forward, while Marcus stood frozen in a South Boston storage unit wearing janitor coveralls. From another box, he retrieved his technical manuals, helicopter systems, emergency procedures, maintenance protocols. The knowledge that had made him one of the Army's best pilots hadn't disappeared, just gone dormant, waiting for necessity to wake it. He photographed the pages on auto-rotation procedures, typed them into his phone's notes app, simplified the language for a civilian pilot under stress, added details from muscle memory, the feel of controls going dead, the split-second decisions that meant survival or death. 2 hours of work produced a 3-page guide, emergency auto-rotation procedure, hydraulic failure, immediate actions, 0 to 5 seconds. Lower collective, completely do not hesitate. Maintain rotor RPM 97, 102%, green arc. Establish steady descent, 1500, 2000. FPM. Pick landing zone immediately, commit fully. Approach 500, 100 feet. AGL. Airspeed 60, 70 knots, adjust for wind. Rate of descent. Steady, smooth corrections. Evaluate landing zone slopes. Obstacles, wind direction. Plan approach path. No second chances. Flare 140 feet. AGL. Aft. Cyclic to arrest forward speed. Timing is critical, too early. Stalls rotor, too late, impacts hard. Feel the deceleration. Trust your instincts. Level skids at 40 feet. Touchdown 0 feet. AGL. Collective up smoothly to cushion landing. Accept some forward slide, better than vertical crash. Keep level, fight any rolling tendency. Brace for impact. Remember, fear sharpens focus. Panic kills. Trust your training. You get one attempt. Make it count. Marcus printed 3 copies at the storage unit's business center, folded them small, tucked one in his pocket with the challenge coin. The hard part came next, Titanfall. Aerospace at noon was busy with day shift workers, engineers, secretaries, sales staff moving between meetings and lunch breaks. Marcus didn't belong here during business hours, was supposed to be invisible until evening. But he walked through the lobby like he owned the place. Gray coveralls, his camouflage clipboard borrowed from the storage unit, his prop. Security barely glanced at his employee badge. The maintenance bay occupied the building's ground floor, a cavernous space where aircraft components were tested and repaired. Marcus had cleaned here dozens of times, knew the layout, the schedules, the patterns. Thursday afternoons, the base supervisor took 2-hour lunches with his mistress. The mechanics worked on fixed-wing projects in the far corner. The helicopter maintenance area sat empty except for tools and parts catalogs. Marcus signed the logbook, Marcus Washington Custodial Cleaning Inspection, and moved deeper into the bay. Found what he needed in the chemical storage room, 5-gallon containers of MIL-H5606 hydraulic fluid, the aviation-grade standard used in most helicopters. Red when contaminated, purple when pure. He filled a 2-quart bottle, sealed it carefully, tucked it inside his coveralls. The roof access required a supervisor keycard, but Marcus had watched the maintenance chief punch the code enough times to memorize it. 7419, the month and year Titanfall was founded. The stairwell climbed 40 stories, emergency lighting, casting everything in sickly yellow. Marcus's legs burned by floor 35, too many nights on concrete floors, too many skipped gym sessions, the erosion of a body that once ran 12-minute 2 miles and maxed the Army PT test. The roof door opened onto wind and sky. The Sikorsky S-76D sat on its helipad like a sleeping predator, 9 tons of precision, engineering capable of speeds exceeding 170 knots, service ceiling of 15,000 feet, carrying capacity for 12 passengers in luxury. $18 million of death trap. Marcus approached carefully, checking sightlines. No cameras on the roof. Insurance considered it low risk. Who would steal a helicopter from downtown Boston? The maintenance panel was secured with a simple padlock, the kind Marcus could pick in 30 seconds, with tools from his storage unit. 22 seconds, actually. Rust had made the tumbler sticky. Inside the panel, the hydraulic system gleamed in afternoon sunlight. Dual independent circuits, redundancy built into every component, each system capable of maintaining control if the other failed. Reservoir pumps, lines, servos, all color-coded, clearly labeled, maintained according to strict schedules. Except someone had compromised the system. Marcus touched the reservoir fluid with his fingertip, rubbed it between thumb and forefinger. The viscosity was wrong, too thin. The color slightly off, more brown than purple. And when he sniffed beneath the standard petroleum smell, something acidic, chemical, wrong. He thought about what he'd heard through the ventilation shaft. The compound is already in the hydraulic system, undetectable until altitude and temperature trigger crystallization. Crystallization meant the fluid would solidify under specific conditions, cold temperatures at altitude, the physics of pressure, and molecular bonding. The helicopter would climb normally, function perfectly until 10,000 feet, when atmospheric pressure dropped and temperature fell, and the hydraulic fluid transformed from liquid to sludge. Total control failure. 30 seconds to impact. No recovery possible at that altitude. Richard had engineered it perfectly. The same method that killed William Sterling 6 months ago, refined and repeated. Marcus couldn't simply drain the contaminated fluid. Richard would notice, would sabotage again, or accelerate the timeline. And Victoria wouldn't believe warnings from a janitor had made that abundantly clear last night. No, Marcus needed a different approach. He carefully drained 30% of the contaminated fluid from the reservoir, refilled it with the pure MIL-H5606 he'd brought. The math ran through his head automatically. If the compound crystallized at 10,000 feet, with full contamination, dilution should lower the threshold. 30% dilution meant crystallization at approximately 7,000 feet. Still dangerous. Still catastrophic. But survivable if the pilot was good and lucky and followed emergency procedures exactly. Marcus resealed the maintenance panel, pocketed his lockpicks, stood. The Boston skyline spread before him, hundreds of thousands of people living ordinary lives, unaware that a janitor on a roof was trying to save a billionaire who despised him. His phone buzzed. Text from Colonel Hayes, protection team ready, location and identities when you give word. Stay safe, Hawk. Marcus descended the stairwell, legs shaking from exertion and adrenaline. Returned the borrowed keycard to the maintenance chief's desk while the man was still at lunch. Clocked out at the security desk, drove home through afternoon traffic. Mrs. Patterson was waiting with Zoe when he arrived at 3:30 to pick her up from school. Someone came by looking for you, the old woman said, voice tight with concern. Asking questions. What you did before custodial work, if you had military background. I told them nothing but Marcus. They knew things. Details about Sarah's accident. About Fallujah. Ice formed in Marcus's stomach. What did they look like? White man. Expensive suit. driving a black Mercedes with tinted windows. Left his card. She handed him a business card, plain white stock. No company logo, just a phone number and 2 words, call tonight. Zoe tugged his hand. Daddy, who's looking for you? Nobody, baby, just work stuff. He forced a smile that felt like broken glass. How was school? Good, I got an A on my spelling test. And Ms. Chen wants to talk to you about my drawings. She lowered her voice conspiratorially. I think she's worried I'm sad because I keep drawing the yellow hair lady. Are you sad? No, I'm excited. I think the yellow hair lady is coming to us soon. I can feel it. Children's intuition striking again, eerie and accurate. Marcus made dinner spaghetti with jarred sauce garlic bread from the dollar store green beans Zoe complained about, but ate anyway. They did homework together at the kitchen table, Marcus checking her math while his mind calculated trajectories and descent rates in the 1,000 ways his plan could fail. At 6:15, he drove Zoe back to Mrs. Patterson's for the overnight shift. Be good for Mrs. P. Always am. Zoe hugged him tight. Daddy, be careful tonight. I had another feeling. What kind of feeling? That something big is going to happen. Something that changes everything. She pulled back, studied his face with those impossible eyes. And you're going to be scared, but you have to be brave anyway. Like Mama always said, courage isn't not being scared. It's being scared and doing it anyway. Marcus held her for a long moment, memorizing the weight of her in his arms, the coconut smell of her hair, the fierce love that made every sacrifice worthwhile. I love you, Zoe, more than anything in the universe. Love you infinity plus one daddy. That's bigger than universe. He watched her disappear into Mrs. Patterson's apartment, then sat in his car for 10 minutes staring at the business card. The threat was clear: call tonight or face consequences. Someone knew about his past. Someone was watching. Marcus dialed the number. 2 rings, then a digitally distorted voice. Chief Warrant Officer Washington, surprised you called so quickly. Who are you? Concerned parties. People who know what you did in Fallujah, what really happened with that family, the intelligence failure you were blamed for. I was court-martialed, found not guilty, because your unit covered for you, because Colonel Hayes is a loyal man who protects his soldiers. But we have the real story. The hesitation before you fired, the way you questioned the target coordinates but followed orders anyway. How you visited that family in the hospital afterward, tried to give them money, apologized in broken Arabic. Marcus's hands tightened on the steering wheel. Everything they described was true, classified information that should have been sealed in his military records. What do you want? For you to mind your business. Victoria Sterling ties tomorrow morning. It's already arranged. Nothing you do will change that. Walk away. Protect your daughter. Don't make her an orphan over a woman who treats you like garbage. And if I don't walk away, then Friday evening when Zoe leaves school, someone will be waiting. Not to hurt her, we're not monsters, but to take her somewhere safe until you learn cooperation. Witness protection is useless against people with our resources. Colonel Hayes can't save you from us. The line went dead. Marcus sat in his car, rage and terror warring in his chest. They'd threatened Zoe, crossed the only line that mattered. Whatever mercy he'd considered for Richard, whatever hesitation about exposing the conspiracy, burned away in the white heat of protective fury. He dialed Colonel Hayes. Sir, they threatened my daughter. I need that protection team now, tonight, before tomorrow's events. Give me addresses. I'll have operators there in 90 minutes. Zoe will be completely secure. Marcus provided Mrs. Patterson's address, described Zoe, explained the threat. Hayes asked no questions, demanded no explanations, simply mobilized with the efficiency that made him a colonel. Hawk, whatever you're planning, be careful. These people sound connected. They are, but I'm committed now, no turning back. Then I have your 6, like always. The call ended. Marcus drove to Titanfall Aerospace through evening traffic, arrived at 5:40 for his shift. Clocked in, loaded his cart. But tonight the routine felt different. Tonight he moved with purpose, a soldier preparing for combat. At 8 p.m., Marcus used Maria Chen's key to enter William Sterling's office. The space remained untouched since William's death. Maria had told him once that Victoria couldn't bear to clear it out, couldn't face the finality of erasing her father's presence. The office was a museum of aerospace history. Model aircraft lined the shelves, P-51, Mustangs, F-14 Tomcats, the first helicopter Igor Sikorsky ever built. Photographs covered the walls. William with presidents, generals, astronauts. William and young Victoria in a Cessna cockpit, both grinning easier times before power and pressure hardened her into ice. Marcus searched systematically. Desk drawers held financial reports. Contracts, nothing relevant. Filing cabinets were locked but yielded to his picks. More business documents, personnel files, corporate archaeology. Then he found it hidden in plain sight. A leather-bound copy of The Art of War by Sun Tzu sitting on William's desk as decoration. Marcus opened it. The pages were hollowed out, creating a cavity that held a flash drive. Simple label. For Maria if I don't return. Marcus plugged it into William's computer. The desktop background was a family photo, William, young Victoria, and a woman Marcus assumed was Victoria's mother, all three laughing on a beach somewhere warm and far from Boston winters. Files opened, folder Richard investigation, photographs, dozens of them. Richard Torrance at casino tables in Atlantic City, chips stacked high, losses mounting. Bank statements showing wire transfers, 500,000, 800,000, and million two. A spreadsheet tracking gambling debts, total 47 million over 3 years. Medical bills. Lisa Torrance, Dana-Farber Cancer Institute. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer. Experimental treatments not covered by insurance, $8.3 million and climbing. A handwritten note in William's precise script, Richard is compromised. Desperate men make desperate choices. He will come for the company. Be ready. To folder insurance policy. Life insurance policy dated February 1st, 2024, 4 days before William's plane crashed. If Victoria Sterling dies in an aviation accident, Richard Torrance receives $100 million at interim CEO compensation and transition support. Underwriter Rothstein and Associates. Marcus Googled them, a known front for organized crime money laundering linked to the Moretti family in multiple federal investigations. Folder protection. A letter from Colonel Benjamin Hayes to William, dated January 15, 2024. Bill Marcus Washington is the finest pilot I ever commanded. What happened in Fallujah destroyed him, but it wasn't his fault. Bad intelligence fog of war, everything by the book. He's struggling now, PTSD, depression, barely keeping his head above water. But he's also the most observant, capable, stubborn man I know. If you need someone who can see threats, others miss someone who won't quit even when broken, he's your man. He won't accept charity. Offer him a job he'll take. Keep him close to Victoria. I won't always be here to protect her from the wolves. William's reply, Ben, I'll hire him as custodial staff. He'll resist anything else. But I need him watching Victoria's back. I've made too many enemies. Stepped on too many powerful toes. If something happens to me, and I think something will, Marcus needs to be in position to protect her. She won't trust easily. She's too much like me, but when the time comes, he'll be there. I'm counting on it. Marcus sat back processing. William Sterling had known he was going to die, had known Richard was compromised, had positioned Marcus as a sleeper agent, a guardian his daughter would never suspect, until the moment she needed saving. 3 years of mopping floors. 3 years of invisibility and humiliation. All part of a dead man's chess game, moves planned from beyond the grave. The office door opened. Maria Chen entered, unsurprised to find Marcus at William's desk. You found it. He knew. Everything. Not everything. William suspected Richard was being blackmailed, didn't know the full extent of the Moretti involvement until too late. His plane went down before he could act. Maria sat in the chair across from the desk. The day before he died, William came to me, gave me the flash drive, said if anything happened, I should give it to you specifically. Not the police, not the FBI, you. Why me? Because William trusted Colonel Hayes completely, and Hayes trusted you, said you were the kind of man who'd do the right thing even when it cost everything. Maria's eyes were sad. Are you going to save her, Marcus? Even though she treats you terribly? Even though she doesn't deserve it? Marcus thought about Victoria's contempt, her casual cruelty, the coffee spilled on clean floors and insults delivered in front of cameras. Thought about Zoe's drawing 3 figures holding hands, a family that didn't exist. Thought about William's faith, Hayes's recommendation, The weight of expectations from dead men and broken soldiers. Yeah, I'm gonna save her. Then you need to know everything. Maria pulled out her own folder, years of HR records and observations. Victoria isn't cruel by nature. She's terrified. Her mother left when she was 16, couldn't handle the pressure of being William Sterling's wife. Her older brother died when she was 8, leukemia, slow and horrible. William poured himself into the company afterward, left Victoria emotionally abandoned. She learned that vulnerability meant pain, that showing weakness invited loss. Maria opened a photograph. Young Victoria, maybe 20, laughing with a young man Marcus didn't recognize. She was engaged once. Jason Pemberton, Harvard MBA, seemed perfect. Turned out he was after her money, cheated on her with her best friend. Victoria found them together 2 weeks before the wedding. She's never dated seriously since. Hasn't let anyone close. Convinced herself that power and control were safer than love. That doesn't excuse how she treats people. No, but it explains it. And Marcus, tomorrow, when you save her life, she's going to fight you every step of the way. She'll resist vulnerability, resist rescue, resist you. Because accepting help means admitting she's not invulnerable, and that terrifies her more than dying. Marcus absorbed this, fitted into his tactical planning, target assessment, psychological profile. Victoria Sterling wasn't just a CEO to extract from danger. She was a wounded person who'd built walls so high she couldn't see out anymore. I need to plant the emergency procedures in the helicopter tonight. And my challenge coin. So she knows I'm military when she finds them. The roof access code is 7419. But Marcus, they're watching. Whoever's working with Richard, they'll know if you interfere. Let them know I'm done hiding. Maria studied him for a long moment. William saw something in you, past the trauma and the PTSD and the broken parts. He saw the warrior underneath. I hope you can see it too. She left him alone in William's office, surrounded by ghosts and expectations. Marcus took the flash drive, pocketed it with the emergency procedures and challenge coin. Left everything else as he'd found it. Closed the door softly on a dead man's sanctuary. The war was here. And Marcus Washington, invisible janitor, was about to become very visible indeed. Midnight on the roof. Wind cut through Marcus's coveralls, carrying October cold and the smell of coming rain. The city spread below like a circuit board, lights, in darkness the pulse of 3 million lives, unaware of the small drama playing out 40 stories up. The Sikorsky waited dark and silent. Marcus picked the maintenance panel lock for the second time in 12 hours, opened it with practiced ease. The diluted hydraulic fluid gleamed in his flashlight beam, purple with brown undertones, contaminated but survivable. His modification was complete. Tomorrow at altitude, the fluid would crystallize, but at 7,000 feet instead of 10,000, giving Victoria a chance if she was good and lucky and followed his instructions exactly. Too many ifs. But better than certain death. He opened the pilot's door, climbed into the left seat for the first time in 3 years. The cockpit closed around him like a familiar embrace, controls positioned where his hands remembered them, instruments laid out in the muscle memory pattern his brain never forgot. For a moment, Marcus allowed himself to remember. Night flights over the Hindu Kush, stars so bright they hurt. The brotherhood of pilots pushing machines to their limits, trusting each other with their lives. The purpose, the meaning, everything he'd lost when Fallujah shattered his confidence and Sarah's death shattered his heart. Then the panic came, sudden and crushing. The cockpit walls pressed in. His breath came in gasps. Sweat broke across his forehead despite the October cold. Fallujah, target confirmed. Finger on the trigger, children screaming. The explosion, the hospital afterward. A father without an arm asking, why, in broken English, while Marcus had no answer except, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. Marcus forced himself through the breathing exercises Dr. Martinez had taught him at the VA. 4 count in, hold 7, 8 count out, repeat, ground yourself. You're on a roof in Boston. It's Thursday. You're 36 years old. Zoe is safe. You have a mission. The panic receded slowly, leaving him shaking and exhausted. He placed the folded emergency procedures on the pilot's seat where Victoria couldn't miss them. On top, his challenge coin brass catching the city lights. Night stalkers don't quit. Marcus climbed out of the helicopter, sealed the maintenance panel, descended through the building's empty nighttime architecture to the custodial closet on the ground floor. From his locker, he retrieved an old iPhone, not his daily phone, a backup with a different number impossible to trace. He activated the voice recording app, tested it clear, audio good battery. Returned to the helicopter one last time, wedged the phone under the co-pilot's seat, where it would record everything that happened tomorrow. If something went wrong, if Marcus's plan failed, and Victoria died, at least there would be evidence. Richard's confession, the Moretti conspiracy, everything needed to bring them down. Small comfort. But Marcus had learned in war that sometimes small comforts were all you got. He finished his custodial rounds on autopilot floors, 15 through 20, executive offices and conference rooms, emptying trash and vacuuming carpets while his mind ran through tomorrow's scenarios. Best case, Victoria followed the procedures, survived the auto-rotation, landed safely. Medium case, rough landing, injuries but survivable. Worst case, the modifications weren't enough. The helicopter went down hard, they both died. Marcus had accepted worst case, made his peace with it, written a letter to Zoe that Mrs. Patterson would deliver if he didn't come home, explained everything, why he'd had to help, what honor meant, how sometimes doing the right thing cost everything, but was still worth it. At 2 a.m. he clocked out, drove home through empty streets. Colonel Hayes had texted, protection team in position, 3 operators, former Delta, best in the business. Zoe is completely secure. Mrs. Patterson briefed and cooperating. You're clear to operate. Marcus allowed himself a moment of relief. Whatever happened tomorrow, Zoe would be safe. He lay in bed not expecting sleep, but finding it anyway, his body's survival mechanism overriding conscious anxiety. Dreamed of helicopters and explosions and a yellow-haired woman falling through clouds while Marcus tried desperately to catch her, but his hands kept slipping, kept failing, always inches too short, until she disappeared into darkness below. Woke gasping at 5 a.m. Friday, the day everything changed. Marcus showered, shaved, dressed in his cleanest jeans and a button-down shirt he usually saved for parent-teacher conferences. Not his custodial uniform. If he was going to confront a CEO and save her life, he'd do it as himself, not invisible, not a janitor, a soldier, a father, a man who'd survived war and loss and 3 years of humiliation to stand ready when needed. He drove to Mrs. Patterson's apartment at 6:30. The protection team was invisible but present. Marcus spotted them with his trained eye, one in a parked van with tinted windows, one at the coffee shop across the street, one on the apartment building roof with a rifle case that probably held more than camera equipment. Mrs. Patterson opened her door, Zoe already dressed and eating breakfast. Daddy, you're early and you're wearing your nice shirt. Got something important today, baby girl. The yellow hair lady. Marcus knelt down eye level with his daughter. Yeah, the yellow hair lady. She's in danger and I'm going to help her. I knew you would. Zoe hugged him tight. Be brave, Daddy. And remember, sometimes the people who need help most are the ones who fight it hardest. You have to help them anyway. Wisdom from an 8-year-old. Marcus held her for a long moment, memorizing everything, her weight, her warmth, her absolute faith in him. I love you, Zoe. Remember that. Whatever happens today, I love you more than anything. I know, Daddy, and I love you infinity plus 1. He kissed the top of her head, stood nodded to Mrs. Patterson. The men outside, their friends. Protection. If anyone tries anything, they'll handle it. I trust you, Marcus. Zoe trusts you. Now go do what you do best. Save people. Marcus drove to Titanfall Aerospace through Friday morning rush hour, arrived at 7:30. Victoria's Tesla was already in the executive lot. Richard's Lexus 3 spaces over. The stage was set. The players in position. At 7:58, Marcus walked through the main lobby in street clothes. No coveralls, no cart, just a man with purpose. Security looked confused but didn't stop him. His badge still worked, even if he wasn't dressed for custodial duties. The elevator climbed to the 15th floor, executive territory, where janitors belonged only when invisible. Victoria's assistant, Emma, stood at her desk outside the corner, office phone pressed to her ear. Saw Marcus approaching. Her eyes widened. I'm sorry you can't. He's not supposed to be on this floor during business hours. Marcus walked past her, opened Victoria's office door without knocking. Victoria sat at her desk reviewing flight plans on her tablet, dressed in a custom flight suit that probably cost more than Marcus's monthly rent. She looked up annoyed, then recognized him. Confusion crossed her face, the janitor in street clothes during business hours. "What are you doing here?" "Saving your life." Richard entered behind Marcus, face pale, hands shaking. "Victoria, we need to talk. Right now." She stood, anger replacing confusion. "Both of you need to leave. I have a flight in 30 minutes. Whatever this is." "Your helicopter is sabotaged," Marcus said calmly. "The hydraulic system is contaminated with the compound that will crystallize at altitude. At 7,000 feet, you'll experience complete control failure. You have approximately 2 minutes to execute an emergency auto-rotation landing, or you'll die." Silence filled the office. Victoria stared at him like he'd spoken Mandarin. "Who are you?" Marcus reached into his pocket, pulled out the flash drive, set it on her desk. "Chief Warrant Officer Marcus Washington, 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment. Your father hired me 3 years ago to protect you. This drive contains everything: Richard's embezzlement, the Moretti conspiracy, how they killed your father, and why they're about to kill you." Victoria's face went white. She looked at Richard. "Is this true?" Richard collapsed into a chair, broken. "I'm sorry, Victoria. I'm so sorry. They have my family. My wife is dying. They threatened Emma. I didn't have a choice." "You always have a choice," Marcus said. "You chose wrong, but there's still time to choose right. Come with me to the authorities. Let me protect your family. Help us take down the Morettis." Richard's phone buzzed. He looked at the screen, terror flooding his features. They know. They know something's wrong. "There's a text: abort or we take Emma now." Victoria moved to the window, stared at the helicopter on the roof. Marcus could see her mind working, calculating the CEO and her, weighing options and odds. "You're a helicopter pilot, a military pilot." "Was. Medical discharge. PTSD. I haven't flown in 3 years. But you can talk me through an emergency landing. If you follow my instructions exactly, if you trust me completely, if we're lucky." She turned to face him. For the first time, Victoria Sterling looked at Marcus Washington and really saw him. Not a janitor, not furniture, a man, a soldier, someone willing to deal to save her life. "Why I've treated you terribly, called you stupid, made you crawl on your knees. Why would you risk everything for me?" Marcus thought about William's faith, Zoe's drawing, Hayes's recommendation, the weight of honor and duty, and the desperate need to save one more life after failing to save so many. Because it's the right thing to do, and because Night Stalkers don't quit. Victoria made her decision, grabbed her flight helmet, turned to Richard. "Call the FBI. Tell them everything. Protect your family. Marcus and I are flying to Hanscom as scheduled. If the Morettis are watching, we can't abort without triggering their response. But we're doing it my way." She looked at Marcus. "You're coming with me. Co-pilot seat. Talk me through whatever happens." "I can't. I'm not certified anymore." "I don't care about paperwork. Get in the helicopter." Every instinct screamed at Marcus to refuse. He wasn't ready, couldn't handle the PTSD, would panic at altitude and get them both killed. But Zoe's voice echoed, "Courage isn't not being scared. It's being scared and doing it anyway." "All right," Marcus said, "but we're doing this right. Follow my instructions exactly. No improvisation, no ego. When I say jump, you don't ask how high, you just jump." Victoria smiled, genuine, not the Ice Queen mask. "Yes, sir, Chief Warrant Officer." They headed for the roof together, soldier and CEO moving toward a helicopter, and a reckoning neither was prepared for, but both accepted anyway. Because sometimes saving lives meant risking everything. And sometimes the people who needed saving most were the ones who fought it hardest. The elevator doors opened onto the rooftop access corridor. Wind howled through the stairwell beyond, carrying October cold and the smell of aviation fuel. Marcus and Victoria moved in silence, their footsteps echoing off concrete walls, the weight of what came next pressing down like atmospheric pressure before a storm. Victoria paused at the roof door, hand on the push bar, turned to face him. "If we die up there, if this goes wrong, I need you to know something." Marcus waited. "I'm sorry for how I treated you. The coffee, the insults, everything. You deserve better. You're better." Her voice cracked slightly. And if I'd known who you were, what you'd sacrificed, I would have. Don't. Marcus cut her off gently. We survive first. Apologize later. Focus on the mission. She nodded, pushed through the door. Wind hit them immediately, 40-story gusts that made standing difficult. The Sikorsky S-76D sat on its helipad rotor's folded morning sun, glinting off its polished fuselage. $18 million of sabotaged machinery. Their salvation or their coffin. Victoria climbed into the pilot's seat with practiced ease. Marcus took the co-pilot position for the second time in 3 years, his body remembering the routine even as his mind screamed warnings. The cockpit smelled of leather and electronics and faintly of hydraulic fluid, that distinctive petroleum scent that should have been neutral but carried undertones of wrongness. Victoria ran through pre-flight checks with mechanical efficiency, flipping switches, verifying systems, her hands steady despite the circumstances. Professional, capable, her father's daughter. Then she saw them, the folded papers on her seat, the brass challenge coin resting on top. She picked up the coin, read the inscription aloud. Chief Warrant Officer Marcus J. Washington, 160th SOAR Night Stalkers Don't Quit. Looked at him with something like wonder. You're a Night Stalker. Jesus Christ. You're one of them. Was. You don't stop being a Night Stalker any more than you stop being a Marine. It's who you are. She unfolded the emergency procedures, scanned them quickly. You wrote this last night. Yes. How detailed it is, how specific. You've done this before. Actual emergency auto rotations. 17 times in combat, 3 in training, all successful. He didn't mention the nightmares that followed each one, the way his hands shook for hours afterward, the certainty each time that this would be the landing that killed him. Victoria set the papers on her knee board, secured them with a clip, put the challenge coin in her flight suit pocket over her heart. Then I guess we're doing this. She completed the pre-flight checklist, contacted Boston Tower for clearance. Her voice over the radio was professional, controlled, giving no indication that she expected to die in the next 30 minutes. Boston Tower, Titanfall 1 ready for departure. VFR flight to Hanscom Air Force Base requesting clearance. Titanfall 1 cleared for departure. Maintain heading 045 altitude 3000 until clear of Class Bravo airspace. Contact Boston approach on 124.3. Cleared for departure, heading 045 3000 feet. Wilco. Victoria's hands moved across the controls with practiced confidence. Battery on, fuel pumps engaged. Starter button. The twin Pratt & Whitney turboshaft engines wound up with their characteristic whine building to a roar as the main rotor began to turn. Marcus felt the familiar vibration through his seat, the helicopter coming alive beneath them. His heart rate spiked. Sweat broke across his palms despite the October cold. The panic that had been lurking at the edges of his consciousness surged forward. Fallujah, night mission, bad intelligence. Finger on the trigger, children screaming, Marcus. Victoria's voice cut through the flashback. Stay with me. I need you here, present, not wherever your mind just went. He forced himself to breathe. 4 count in, hold 7, 8 count out. The technique worked, barely pushing the panic back enough to function. I'm here. Good, because we're lifting off in 30 seconds. She glanced at him, and for the first time since he'd known her, Victoria Sterling looked vulnerable, scared, human. And Marcus, thank you for everything, for seeing past the Ice Queen to whoever I might actually be underneath. You don't have to thank me until we're on the ground. I'm thanking you now, just in case. The rotor reached operational speed. Victoria pulled collective applied pedal, eased the cyclic forward. The Sikorsky lifted smoothly from the helipad. Boston falling away beneath them, the city spreading out in morning light like a promise or a threat depending on whether they survived the next half hour. 500 feet, 1,000, 1,500. The controls responded normally. All gauges green. No indication of the poison running through the hydraulic system, waiting for altitude and temperature to trigger its transformation from liquid to solid. 2,000 feet, 2,500. Marcus monitored the instruments with the obsessive attention that had kept him alive through 1,500 combat hours. Hydraulic pressure holding steady at 520 psi. Temperature normal. Engine performance optimal. The contaminated fluid was still behaving like fluid. Still flowing, still allowing control. But at 7,000 feet, molecular bonds would shift. Temperature would drop, pressure would change, and the fluid would crystallize into useless sludge. 3,000 feet. Victoria contacted Boston Approach, received clearance to continue climbing, turn northeast toward Hanscom Air Force Base 40 miles away. 4,000 feet. Marcus's hands gripped his knees hidden below the instrument panel, where Victoria couldn't see how badly they shook. The altitude was triggering something deep in his brainstem, some primal recognition that height plus machinery plus his broken reflexes equaled death. 5,000 feet. Marcus, Victoria's voice was steady. Talk to me about anything. Keep me focused. He forced words through his constricted throat. What made you want to fly, my father? Started teaching me when I was 16. Said aviation was freedom up here, only skill mattered. Not gender, not politics. Just whether you could handle the machine. She adjusted trim, made a minor heading correction. I loved it, still do. The only time I feel completely in control is when I'm flying. That's about to change. I know. She checked the altimeter. 5,500 feet. But I'm not alone this time. That's different. Usually I face everything alone. Why? Because letting people close means they can hurt you, disappoint you, leave you. Her voice was matter-of-fact, discussing emotional trauma like a maintenance issue. My mother left when I was 16. Couldn't handle being married to William Sterling, the pressure and expectations. My brother died when I was 8. Cancer took 18 months to kill him, slow and horrible. My father poured himself into the company afterward, left me emotionally abandoned. And my fiancée cheated on me 2 weeks before our wedding. She climbed through 6,000 feet. So I learned that vulnerability was dangerous. That control was safer than connection. Better to be the ice queen than the girl crying alone when everyone leaves. Marcus understood that logic intimately. After Sarah died, after Fallujah shattered him, he'd retreated into invisibility for the same reason. If you were nothing, loss couldn't touch you. But control is an illusion, he said quietly. You can't prevent every loss. Can't protect yourself from every pain. All you do is guarantee loneliness. I know. Victoria's hands tightened on the controls. Took me until this moment to really understand it. Funny timing. 6,500 feet. The hydraulic pressure gauge flickered. 1,520 psi to 1,480 to 1,520 again. A hiccup. A warning. Marcus, I see it. 6,800 feet. The pressure dropped more definitively. 1,520 to 1,450 to 1,380. The needle falling like a stone as the contaminated fluid began its transformation, molecules locking into crystalline structures that couldn't flow, couldn't transmit force, couldn't keep them alive. How long? Victoria's voice was tight. Seconds, maybe a minute. Start your descent now. Don't wait for complete failure. She lowered the collective, began a gentle descent. But they needed 7,000 feet for the crystallization to fully trigger, and they were already at 6,900. The cyclic went stiff in Victoria's hand. The pedals resisted her input. Hydraulic pressure dropped through 1,000 psi, through 800, through 500. It's happening, she said, and Marcus heard the edge of panic in her voice. Stay calm. You trained for this. Trust your training. 400 psi, 200, 100, 0. The controls locked completely. Victoria pulled and pushed with no response. They were at 6,900 feet, descending slowly, but without hydraulic assist. They had seconds before the rotor lost effectiveness, and they started falling. Collective down, all the way, now. Victoria dropped the collective to its lowest position. The helicopter's descent steepened immediately, but more controlled. The rotor, freed from powered resistance, began windmilling faster, building RPM that would become their only salvation. Good. Perfect. Watch your RPM, 97 to 102%. Green arc. 6,000 feet. 5,500. Dropping fast, now controlled but inexorable. Marcus scanned ahead for landing zones. They were over suburbs north of Boston, houses, strip malls, schools. No good options. Then he saw it, a high school football field, artificial turf, maybe 200 yards long. Barely adequate, but better than rooftops or highways. See that field dead ahead, maybe 3 miles? That's your target. Residential area. People could be focus, pick your spot, commit to it, no second chances. 5,000 feet, the ground details sharpening with sickening speed. Individual cars visible on roads below, people in yards. A normal Friday morning about to be interrupted by a falling helicopter. Victoria's breathing was rapid, shallow, panic rising. "Breathe with me," Marcus said, his voice dropping into the command tone that had guided pilots through 100 emergencies. "4 count in. You're doing perfect. This is working. Trust the process." 4,000 feet. The wind noise increased as their descent rate climbed to 1,800 feet per minute. The helicopter shook, vibrated metal and physics combining in barely controlled chaos. "Airspeed 65 knots. Good. Maintain heading. Keep the RPM in the green." 3,000 feet. Victoria was sweating despite the cold, her jaw clenched, every muscle tight with concentration. She was a good pilot, Marcus realized. Better than good. Natural talent refined by training and her father's exacting standards. She had the instincts, the feel, the courage. She might actually pull this off. 2,000 feet. The football field filled their windscreen. Marcus could see goalposts, yard markers, a few early morning joggers on the track who'd stopped to stare at the helicopter descending toward them like a wounded bird. "Clear the field," Victoria said. "We're going to hit right in the middle. Tell them to run." Marcus couldn't call anyone. No radio contact with ground personnel. But the joggers figured it out, started sprinting away from the field, waving their arms, shouting warnings. Marcus couldn't hear over the rotor noise. 1,000 feet. 500. The field was definitely too short, but they were committed now. No choice but to make it work. "Flare point coming up. Watch your altitude. On my mark. 3, 2, 1. Flare." Victoria pulled back hard on the cyclic. The helicopter's nose pitched up sharply, bleeding off forward momentum, converting airspeed into precious seconds of slower descent. Physics worked in their favor for once, the auto-rotation technique that had saved countless pilots provided they were skilled and lucky and brave. 200 feet, 100, 50. Level the skids, both hands on the cyclic. Victoria fought the controls, using every ounce of strength to keep the helicopter level. The ground rushed up artificial turf yard lines, end zone. 30 feet, 20. Collective up, cushion the landing. She pulled collective, using the stored energy in the spinning rotor to create one last burst of lift. The helicopter's descent slowed dramatically. The skids hit artificial turf at maybe 10 feet per second instead of 50. Hard impact. Bone jarring. Marcus's teeth clacked together. His head snapped forward against the shoulder harness. The helicopter bounced, tilted to the left, rotors still spinning dangerously close to the ground. For one impossible moment, they teetered on the edge of rolling over. The rotor tips were going to hit. They were going to cartwheel across the football field in a screaming explosion of metal and fire. Marcus threw his weight to the right, adding his mass to Victoria's desperate efforts to level the aircraft. The helicopter slammed back down on both skids, bounced again, slid sideways across wet turf for 30 feet, before finally stopping. Silence, or relative silence. The rotors still spun overhead, winding down gradually, tick, 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 of metal cooling, Marcus's pulse hammering in his ears. "We're alive," Victoria whispered. "Holy shit, we're actually alive." Marcus unbuckled with shaking hands, had his door open before Victoria finished processing. The helicopter was compromised, fuel lines potentially ruptured, fire, a real possibility. "Move, now, fuel leak." They scrambled out, ran 20 yards, fell to their knees on the 40-yard line. Behind them, the Sikorsky S-76D sat crookedly on the football field, rotors still turning morning sun, glinting off its damaged fuselage. Then came the explosion. Not from their helicopter. From somewhere distant, but close enough to rattle Marcus's chest. He turned to saw a column of black smoke rising from the direction of downtown Boston. From Titanfall Tower. Victoria's face went white. "Richard, oh God, Richard." Marcus pulled out his phone, miraculously intact despite the crash landing. 17 missed calls, dozens of texts, all from Colonel Hayes. Titanfall Tower parking garage explosion. One fatality confirmed. Richard Torrance, car bomb, FBI on scene. Moretti family moving fast. They know about your intervention. Protection team engaging potential threats near your daughter's location. Call me immediately. Situation critical. Marcus dialed. Hayes answered on the first ring. Hawk, you're alive. Barely. Status on Zoe. Completely secure. Moretti sent a team 3 men professional hitters. My operators intercepted them 2 blocks from the school, all 3 in custody singing like canaries about the whole conspiracy. But Marcus Richard Torrance is dead. Car bomb detonated remotely when he tried to leave the building. Victoria made a sound half sob, half gasp. She'd heard enough to understand. Marcus kept his voice level operational. What's our next move? FBI wants statements from both of you. I've arranged protective custody safe house in Concord, 20-minute drive from your position. Local PD is en route to secure the crash site. Media is already swarming. This is going to be national news within the hour. Copy that. We'll be ready. Marcus ended the call, turned to Victoria. She sat on the artificial turf arms wrapped around her knees, staring at the smoke rising from downtown. Tears ran down her face, carving clean lines through the dirt and sweat of survival. He's dead. Richard's dead. Because of me. Because I wouldn't cancel the flight. Because I insisted on showing strength instead of... No. Marcus sat beside her, close but not touching. He's dead because he made choices. Because he stole $85 million and got involved with organized crime and tried to commit murder rather than face consequences. His death is tragic, but it's not your fault. He had a wife, a daughter, 8 years old, same as... She stopped, looked at Marcus. You have a daughter. Yeah, Zoe, 8 years old. That's why you did this. Not for me, for her. Because you couldn't stand the thought of Emma Torrance losing her father the way Zoe lost her mother. Marcus considered lying, but Victoria deserved truth. Partially, but also because it was the right thing to do. Because your father trusted me to protect you. Because Night Stalkers don't quit even when we're broken and scared and haven't flown in 3 years. Sirens approached from multiple directions, police, fire, ambulances, the whole emergency response apparatus converging on a high school football field where a billionaire CEO and a janitor-turned-pilot had just survived a sabotaged helicopter crash. Victoria pulled the challenge coin from her pocket, studied it in morning sunlight. Your father gave you this. No, my unit commander, Colonel Hayes, day I made chief warrant officer. He said it meant I was part of something bigger than myself. That Night Stalkers took care of each other always, no matter what. Marcus took a shaking breath. I lost faith in that after Fallujah. After I screwed up and nearly killed that family. After Sarah died and the army discharged me. Thought I didn't deserve to keep it. But you did keep it. Yeah, because Hayes told me the coin wasn't about deserving. It was about commitment. About being the kind of person who stands up when it matters, even when it costs everything. He looked at her directly. You're that kind of person too, Victoria. Under all the ice and control. You proved it today. I was terrified. Courage isn't not being scared. It's being scared and flying anyway. She laughed, shaky but genuine. My daughter would like you. Zoe. She says stuff like that too. Wisdom way beyond her years. Victoria stood, offered her hand to help Marcus up. I'd like to meet her, Zoe Vahied, if that's okay. If you think... She already knows you, drew you into our family portrait 3 days ago. Yellow hair, blue dress, holding hands with us. Said she had a feeling you were coming. Victoria stared at him. How could she possibly... Kids know things, see things, especially kids who've lost people. They develop this intuition, this sensitivity to connections others miss. Marcus accepted her hand, let her pull him to his feet. Zoe's been drawing you into our family for weeks, before I knew your name, before any of this, like she saw the future. The first police cruiser pulled onto the field, followed by fire trucks and ambulances. Paramedics rushed toward them with stretchers and medical bags. News helicopters circled overhead. Channel 4, Channel 7 CN. Marcus and Victoria stood side by side, covered in dirt and sweat, and the residue of survival as the world descended to record what they'd survived. This is going to be complicated, Victoria said quietly. Media coverage, board meetings, investigations, and us, whatever we are now. A CEO and her janitor who saved her life. People won't understand. Let them not understand. We know what happened up there. That's enough. Victoria turned to face him fully. Marcus Washington, will you do something for me? Depends what it is. Come work for me. For real. Not as a janitor, as chief of flight safety. Oversee all our aircraft operations. Make sure what happened today never happens to anyone else. 75,000 salary to start. Full benefits. Your own office. Your daughter gets college scholarship fund. And Marcus, you report directly to me. No intermediaries, no bureaucracy, just you making sure Titanfall Aerospace is as safe as humanly possible. Marcus wanted to refuse, wanted to stay invisible, stay safe, avoid the complications that came with stepping into the light. But Zoe's voice echoed in his memory. Sometimes the people who need help most are the ones who fight it hardest. You have to help them anyway. And maybe that went both ways. Maybe Victoria needed him to accept, needed him to trust that she could change, could become someone worthy of the second chance he was offering. One condition? Name it. The mental health program you mentioned yesterday. For veterans with PTSD, I run it, my way. No corporate oversight, no board approval needed, just resources and freedom to help pilots who've lost their wings get them back. Victoria extended her hand. Deal. They shook as paramedics surrounded them, as cameras captured the moment from 36 angles, as a new chapter began that neither of them fully understood yet, but both committed to anyway. Because sometimes saving lives meant risking everything. And sometimes the people who saved you were the ones you treated the worst. The Hartford Morrison Foundation occupied the entire third floor of Titanfall Aerospace, 15,000 square feet of therapy rooms, flight simulators, medical facilities, and office space dedicated to helping combat veterans reclaim their wings. Marcus stood in front of 18 pilots on a Thursday morning in April. Men and women who'd lost their flying careers to PTSD, physical injuries, or the 1,000 invisible wounds that came from pushing machines through hell and somehow surviving when brothers and sisters didn't. Hydraulic pressure, he called out, using the teaching method that had helped him recover his own confidence over the past 6 months. Normal range 1450 to 1550 psi, responded James Chen, a former Apache pilot who hadn't touched a helicopter in 4 years after his gunner was killed by an RPG in Afghanistan. What do we check if pressure drops? Fluid level line integrity, contamination markers, pump function, servo response. This from Maria Santos, different Maria than Chen from HR, who'd flown Blackhawks in Iraq until a hard landing shattered 3 vertebrae and destroyed her medical certification. Marcus nodded. These people knew their material, knew the technical details cold. What they'd lost wasn't knowledge, but confidence. The absolute certainty that when crisis came, they could handle it. He understood intimately. 6 months ago, climbing into that Sikorsky with Victoria, he'd been convinced his broken reflexes would get them both killed. Had been certain that panic would overwhelm training at the critical moment, but it hadn't. And that single successful emergency auto-rotation, that one moment of choosing courage over fear, had begun healing wounds Marcus thought were permanent. He still had nightmares, still woke sweating from dreams of Fallujah, still took sertraline every morning. But the nightmares came less frequently now. The medication was working better. And most importantly, he had purpose again. Meaning. The thing that made waking up worth the effort. All right, people, let's move to the simulator for emergency procedure practice. Chen, you're up first. Hydraulic failure at altitude. Show me what you've learned. The pilots filed toward the simulator room. Marcus started to follow, then noticed Victoria standing in the doorway watching. She wore jeans and a Titanfall polo shirt, the casual Friday dress code she'd instituted 2 months ago, much to the board's consternation. Her hair was loose instead of pulled into its usual severe bun. She looked younger, happier, human. How's the new cohort? She asked. Good, really good. Chen's ready to retest for his commercial license. Santos is close. Give her another month. That's 18 graduates in 6 months. Your program is exceeding every projection. Victoria walked into the room, examined the wall of photos, every pilot who'd regained their wings through the foundation's smiling faces arranged in rows of second chances and hard-won victories. The Pentagon called yesterday. They want to replicate this program at 5 other locations. National Model for Veteran Rehabilitation. That's Zoe's doing. If she hadn't drawn you into, our family hadn't insisted I help the sad yellow-haired lady, none of this exists. Victoria smiled at the nickname that had stuck despite months of knowing each other. Speaking of Zoe still coming to dinner Sunday, she requested I bring that fancy chocolate cake from the North End Bakery. She's been talking about nothing else all week. Fair warning, she's going to ask invasive questions about our relationship status. And what do we tell her? Marcus considered the question that had been hovering between them for months. They'd been taking things slowly, dinner once a week, occasional day trips, with Zoe building friendship first, because both of them had been hurt badly enough to approach vulnerability carefully. But somewhere along the way, friendship had shifted into something deeper. Lingering looks, hands touching, accidentally on purpose. Conversations that went late into the night, covering everything from childhood trauma to favorite movies to whether hot dogs counted as sandwiches. We tell her the truth, Marcus said finally, that we're figuring it out, that relationships are complicated, that adults don't have all the answers either. She'll see right through that diplomatic nonsense. Victoria moved closer, near enough that Marcus could smell her perfume, different now, something softer and less expensive, chosen for personal preference rather than image management. Or we could tell her that I'm dating her father, officially, if that's something you want. Marcus's heart rate spiked. You sure the board's already uncomfortable with a former janitor as chief of flight safety? Add in the CEO dating him. The board can be uncomfortable. They don't run my life. Victoria reached out, took his hand, the first really deliberate physical contact beyond professional handshakes and occasional shoulder touches. Marcus, you saved my life twice. Once in that helicopter, once by showing me that control and power aren't the same as strength. That vulnerability isn't weakness. That letting people close is terrifying, but necessary. You saved me too, gave me purpose when I'd given up on ever mattering again, believed in me when I couldn't believe in myself. They stood holding hands in the empty classroom, surrounded by photos of reclaimed dreams and hard-won second chances, while spring sunlight streamed through windows, and somewhere in the building, 18 pilots practiced emergency procedures that might someday save their lives. So, Sunday dinner, Victoria said. We tell Zoe we're officially together. And then Monday I'm announcing it to the board. Professional relationship disclosure. Let them clutch their pearls all they want. They'll try to force you to choose, CEO or relationship. Make it about optics and shareholders and propriety. Then I'll choose both. I'm Victoria Sterling. I don't do what people expect anymore. She squeezed his hand. Besides, I've got an amazing chief of flight safety who taught me that courage means being scared and doing it anyway. That lesson applies to more than just flying. Marcus pulled her closer, wrapped his arms around her waist, felt her settle against him with the kind of trust that took months to build and could be destroyed in seconds. They'd both been broken when they met, both hiding behind armor, hers made of ice and control, his made of invisibility and self-erasure. But piece by careful piece, they'd helped each other heal. Not completely, not perfectly. Healing wasn't linear, and trauma didn't disappear just because you love someone. But together they were stronger than either had been alone. I love you, Marcus said quietly. I know it's only been 6 months. I know we're supposed to take things slow. But I love you, Victoria Sterling, and I'm tired of pretending I don't. She pulled back enough to look at him, and her eyes were wet with tears she no longer tried to hide. I love you too, even though you saw me at my worst, even though I treated you like garbage. You looked past all my defenses and loved the person underneath anyway. They kissed for the first time, soft and tentative, at first then deeper. 6 months of careful restraint breaking down into genuine connection. The kind of kiss that promised futures and second chances and families built from broken pieces glued together with courage. When they finally separated, Victoria laughed softly. Zoe's going to be insufferable about this. She's been telling me for months that we were obviously meant to be together. She drew us into her portrait before we even knew it ourselves. Kids got instincts. She gets that from you. She gets it from her mother. Sarah always knew things before they happened. Used to drive me crazy how often she was right. Marcus felt the familiar pang of loss, but gentler now, softened by time and new love that didn't erase the old but made room beside it. Sarah would have liked you, once you stopped being terrible anyway. Victoria laughed. I'll take that as a compliment. Come on, I need to review the quarterly reports before the board meeting this afternoon. Walk me to my office. They left the classroom hand in hand, and if employees stared or whispered as they passed, neither of them cared. Let people talk. Let the board clutch their pearls. Let society question how a billionaire CEO and a former janitor with PTSD could possibly work as a couple. They knew the truth, had lived it, survived it together. Everything else was just noise. Zoe Washington sat at the dining table in Victoria's penthouse, which had been transformed over the past 6 months from sterile showroom to actual home, complete with family photos and mismatched furniture and crayon drawings held to the refrigerator with magnets carefully arranging place settings. 3 plates, 3 forks, 3 knives, 3 napkins folded into triangles because Victoria had shown her how, and Zoe liked making things look fancy. Is this right, Mama V? She'd started calling Victoria that 2 months ago when they'd agreed that Miss Sterling was too formal, and Victoria felt weird, and Mama V perfectly captured the relationship that was developing. Victoria checked Zoe's work from the kitchen where she was attempting to cook, actually cook, not order expensive takeout with mixed results. Perfect, sweetie. You are better at this than I am. That's because you never practiced. Daddy says practice makes better, not perfect, because perfect is boring. Your daddy is wise. I know. That's why I'm glad you're dating him. He needs someone wise too. You guys match. Zoe moved to the living room window, pressed her face against the glass to watch the street 40 stories below. When's he getting here? Soon. Traffic from Dorchester can be unpredictable on Sundays. Are you nervous? Victoria paused mid-stir of the pasta sauce from the jar because she'd learned to pick her battles. Why would I be nervous? Because tonight's special. I can feel it. Zoe turned from the window with those impossibly old eyes. You are going to tell me something important about you and Daddy. Sometimes the kid was eerily perceptive. Victoria set down the wooden spoon, came to sit on the couch beside Zoe. You're right. We do have something to tell you, but I want to make sure you're okay with it first, because this affects you too. Big changes affect the whole family. You're officially dating, like girlfriend, boyfriend official. Not just friends who eat dinner sometimes. Victoria blinked. How did you? I drew it in my portrait 6 months ago, remember? Before Daddy even saved you in the helicopter. I knew you were going to be our family. Zoe climbed into Victoria's lap, something that had taken 3 months to become comfortable, but now felt natural as breathing. And I'm really, really happy about it, because you make Daddy smile again. Like he used to before Mama died. And you're less sad now, too. I can feel it. I am less sad. Your father helped me understand that being strong doesn't mean being alone. That asking for help isn't weakness. That families come in all different shapes, not just the ones society expects. Like us, we're a weird shape, but we fit together good. We do fit together. Very good. Victoria hugged Zoe close, felt the weight of responsibility and love, and the terrifying joy of maternal feelings she'd never expected to experience. You know what? You're the bravest 8-year-old I've ever met. You lost your mama, but you're still open to loving new people. That takes courage. Daddy says courage is being scared and doing it anyway. I was scared to love you at first. Scared you might leave like Mama did. But then I remembered Mama didn't want to leave. Cancer took her. And you're choosing to stay. That's different. The intercom buzzed. Marcus's voice. It's me, bearing gifts of breadsticks and chocolate cake. Zoe shrieked, jumped off Victoria's lap, ran to buzz him in. 3 minutes later, Marcus emerged from the elevator, carrying grocery bags, looking relaxed in jeans and a button-down shirt, more confident now than he'd been 6 months ago. Purpose and love had restored something essential that trauma had taken away. Daddy, Zoe launched herself at him. Marcus caught her with practiced ease, spun her around while managing not to drop the groceries. Hey, baby girl, you look fancy. Is that a new dress? Mama V bought it for me. It has pockets. The casual use of Mama V made Marcus's eyes go wide. He looked at Victoria over Zoe's head. Mouthed, she called you. Whoa, Victoria nodded, smiling. 2 months now. I wanted to tell you, but she asked if it could be our special secret for a while. I'm telling him now, though, Zoe announced, because tonight's special. Tonight's when we officially become a family. They had dinner together, slightly burnt garlic bread, overcooked pasta salad that was actually pretty good, and it was perfect despite the culinary imperfections. They told stories, laughed at jokes. Zoe dominated the conversation with elaborate descriptions of third-grade drama and her teacher's unfair stance on homework. After dinner, after the fancy chocolate cake had been decimated and dishes cleared, they sat together on the couch, Zoe in the middle, Marcus and Victoria on either side, her small hands holding both of theirs. "So," Zoe said solemnly, "are you going to tell me you're dating officially now? Because I already know. But you should still say it. It's important to say things out loud." Marcus laughed. "Yes, baby girl, Victoria and I are officially dating. Girlfriend, boyfriend official. Which means, which means we're figuring out what our family looks like," Victoria continued. "The three of us, not rushing, not forcing anything, just letting it develop naturally. And maybe someday," Marcus added carefully, "if things keep going well, maybe we become even more official, like living together official, or even married official. But only if everyone's comfortable, only if it feels right for all three of us." Zoe considered this with the seriousness she brought to all important decisions. "I'm comfortable. Mama V's apartment is way nicer than ours, better TV, and she's teaching me to cook fancy stuff. And she doesn't get scared of my nightmares like Mrs. Patterson does." "You have nightmares?" Victoria looked stricken. "You never told me." "Sometimes about Mama, about fires and crashes and losing people." Zoe's voice went small. "But when I stay over here and you check on me, they're not as bad. Like having two parents again makes the scary stuff less scary." Marcus and Victoria exchanged looks over Zoe's head, complex looks that contained grief and hope in the terrifying responsibility of trying to build something good from broken pieces. "Then we keep doing this," Marcus said. "Keep building our weird-shaped family that fits together good. Keep being honest. Keep showing up for each other." "Deal, Sabine." "Deal," Zoe said. "Deal," Victoria echoed. They sat together as evening turned to night, Boston's lights spreading below like constellations. And for the first time in years, for all three of them, the future felt less like a threat and more like a promise. The annual William Hartford Memorial Service drew 200 people to the Titanfall Aerospace Auditorium. Board members, employees, military brass, aviation industry leaders, all gathered to remember a man who'd built an empire and died too young, leaving behind a daughter who transformed his legacy into something he never could have imagined. Marcus stood at the podium in his first real suit, custom-fitted Victoria's insistence, with his family in the front row. Victoria in a navy dress, simple and elegant. Zoe in matching navy, fidgeting slightly, but managing to sit still. Mrs. Patterson beside them because she was family too, the grandmother Zoe had adopted and who'd helped raise her through the hardest years. Behind them, 53 graduates of the Hartford Morrison Foundation, pilots who'd reclaimed their wings, veterans who'd found purpose again, living testament to what happened when broken people helped each other heal. William Hartford hired a janitor. Marcus began, his voice carrying across the auditorium through speakers that had been tested 3 times because Victoria insisted on technical perfection. But he saw a soldier. He knew his daughter would need protection, not from outside threats, but from herself, from the isolation that power brings, from the belief that control and strength were the same thing. He pulled out his challenge coin, the one Victoria had found in the helicopter, the one that had started everything. "This coin says Night Stalkers don't quit. For 5 years after Fallujah, after I lost my wings and my wife and nearly lost myself, I carried this coin but didn't believe it anymore. Thought I'd quit on everything that mattered. Thought I was just surviving, not living." Marcus looked at Victoria, at Zoe, at the family they'd built from impossible circumstances. "Then a woman in $1,000 heels threw helicopter keys at my feet and accidentally saved my life. Challenged me to fly when I thought I never would again. Made me invisible for 3 years until the moment I needed to be visible. And through all of it, through the humiliation and the contempt and the coffee spilled on clean floors, She was teaching me the same lesson her father had learned too late, that vulnerability isn't weakness, that asking for help isn't failure, that the strongest families are built from broken people brave enough to let each other in. The audience was silent, rapt. We all wear armor, Marcus continued. Some of us wear ice and control. Some wear invisibility and self-erasure. Some wear anger or addiction or 1,000 other shields against a world that's hurt us. But real strength, the kind William Hartford was trying to teach his daughter, the kind Colonel Hayes tried to teach me, the kind that actually matters, is the courage to lower that armor with the right people, to risk being hurt again because connection matters more than safety. He pocketed the coin, looked directly at Victoria. William Hartford's greatest achievement wasn't building a $1 billion company. It was having the foresight to position someone who could save his daughter when he couldn't, having the wisdom to see potential in broken soldiers that others dismissed, having the love to keep protecting her even from beyond the grave. Marcus stepped away from the podium, walked to where Victoria sat, pulled a small box from his pocket, velvet worn from being carried for the past month, while he built up the courage to use it. The audience gasped. Zoe bounced in her seat, barely containing squeals of excitement. "Victoria Sterling," Marcus said, his voice steady despite his racing heart. "You saved me by giving me purpose. I saved you by showing you vulnerability. Together we saved each other by being brave enough to build something neither of us thought we deserved. Will you marry me?" He opened the box. Simple gold band with a small diamond, modest by billionaire standards, but bought with his own money, earned through honest work, symbolic of the life they'd chosen, that rejected easy answers and comfortable privilege. Victoria stood, tears streaming down her face. "You're proposing at my father's memorial service. He brought us together. Seems right he should be here for this moment. That's the most romantic thing anyone's ever said to me." She held out her left hand. "Yes, obviously yes. I'd be an idiot to say anything else." Marcus slipped the ring on her finger as the audience erupted in applause. Zoe launched herself at them, wrapping her arms around both their waists, creating a three-person hug that represented everything they'd become. "I knew it," Zoe shouted over the applause. "I knew you were going to get married. I've been drawing wedding pictures for weeks." Victoria laughed through tears, held Marcus and Zoe close, felt the weight of her father's expectations lift and transform into something lighter. Not burden, but gift. Not pressure, but possibility. "I love you," she whispered to Marcus. "I love both of you, my weird-shaped family that fits together perfectly." "Infinity plus one," Zoe added. "That's how much we all love each other. It's bigger than universe." The wedding was small and perfect. 50 people in Victoria's Harbor penthouse, which they'd converted together into a real home. Not sterile showroom, not bachelor apartment. Something new built from combined pieces representing both their histories while making space for their future. Mrs. Patterson officiated. She'd gotten ordained online specifically for this purpose, declared it her greatest achievement besides raising Zoe. The ceremony was short, in honest vows written by Marcus and Victoria that promised partnership rather than perfection, acknowledged trauma, while choosing hope, embraced their unlikely story as strength rather than scandal. Zoe was Flower Girl, of course, 9 years old now, and glowing with the pride of a child who'd seen the future in crayon and watched it manifest in real life. Colonel Hayes attended along with 20 pilots from the Hartford Morrison Foundation. Maria Chen from HR, who'd kept William's secrets and trusted Marcus when it mattered. Dave, the night supervisor, who'd barely noticed Marcus for 3 years, but showed up anyway because redemption stories deserve witnesses. The board members, who'd initially opposed Victoria's relationship with the help, were conspicuously absent. 3 had resigned when Victoria made it clear she wouldn't choose between company and family. The rest had learned to accept what they couldn't change. Titanfall Aerospace thrived under their joint leadership. Victoria as CEO, Marcus as Chief of Flight Safety. They'd exposed the Moretti conspiracy, implemented new safety protocols, transformed company culture from cutthroat to collaborative. Stock price was up 40%. Employee satisfaction at record highs. The Pentagon had awarded them 3 new contracts based on reputation for integrity and innovation. But more than business success, they'd built something rare and precious, a family forged from loss and trauma, in the desperate courage to try again when every instinct said, stay safe, stay guarded, stay alone. During the reception, as guests mingled and Zoe regaled anyone who'd listened with stories about how she'd predicted this whole thing years ago, Marcus and Victoria found themselves alone on the balcony. Boston spread below them, the city where they'd met and struggled and somehow found each other despite impossible odds. Happy, Marcus asked, deliriously, terrifyingly, completely. Victoria leaned against him, her head on his shoulder. I keep waiting for something to go wrong. For you to realize you married a former ice queen with control issues. You keep waiting for me to have a PTSD episode that drives you away. For the nightmares to be too much. For my broken parts to overwhelm the good ones. So we're both scared. Yeah, but we're doing it anyway. That's the definition of courage, remember. Victoria turned to face him, took his hands in hers. Thank you for seeing past the Ice Queen, for saving my life twice, once in that helicopter, once by teaching me how to be human again, for giving Zoe a family, for everything. Thank you for giving me purpose when I'd given up, for believing I could be more than invisible, for loving my daughter like she's your own, for making our weird-shaped family possible. They kissed as the sun set over Boston Harbor, as their daughter played inside with her grandmother, as 50 people who'd witnessed their unlikely journey celebrated the fact that sometimes love stories started with contempt and ended with forever. Because sometimes the people who needed saving most were the ones who fought it hardest. Sometimes the greatest strength was admitting weakness. Sometimes families were built from broken pieces that fit together perfectly when glued with courage. And sometimes, just sometimes, janitors married billionaires, and everyone lived happily complicated ever after. Inside, Zoe was showing guests her original crayon portrait from 2 years ago. 3 figures holding hands. Yellow-haired woman, dark-skinned man, small girl with puffs of hair. All smiling, all together. See, she said proudly to anyone who'd listen. I knew. I drew them before they even knew each other. That's because some families are chosen by love instead of blood. And those are the strongest kind. The guests agreed, and somewhere William Hartford and Sarah Washington watched from whatever place souls went after leaving bodies behind, and they were proud of what their loved ones had built from the rubble of loss and the raw material of courage. The end. Or rather, the beginning disguised as an ending. Because every happy ending is really just a new story starting. And this family's story was only just beginning.